Let's get back after it, shall we? The present situation in America, a legal person equals a legal fiction, all right? In the Maritime Admiralty, commercial courts, the quasi-judicial venues that are masquerading around as government, typically are lodged under Title 42, under the executive branch, and they're ministerial administrators, administrative law clerks, administrative law judges, and foreign agents and agency in direct violation of the Foreign Registration Act of 1938 as amended in 1939, being part of the Communist Manifesto, being declared by the House Senate Review Board of Un-American Activities back in the 50s. And we were warned. We were warned about what they were doing. The American people knew what was going on, and unfortunately didn't take action steadfast as they should have. And now we're left with the festering wound, if you will, of what the American people are being subjected to. So how do we overcome and make the proper correction here? Well, first we have to gain the acquired knowledge to comprehend what has actually transpired. So when you're dealing with the public, understand that that's the fiction. It's under martial law. It's under martial rule, okay? It's all underneath the Department of Defense, the United States Postal Service, the Treasury, if you will, okay? But we were guaranteed a Republican form of government. We, the people, to our peace and our posterity and for our general welfare, all right, created government. Government was to serve man, not the other way around where man serves government and its agendas and follows along blindly. The Reconstruction Act of 1871, they created an entity and they mirrored the organic constitution, and they used a perversion of English, which can be attributed to nothing other than hieroglyphics, okay? So we're talking about the ens legis entities and the style of the way that they create their documents and their quasi-jurisdictional, quasi-judicial, in rem proceedings, all right? And my objective and goal is to help you guys ascend to the mind. I'm not asking you to change your belief, okay? I'm just going to state some facts and plant some seeds, and hopefully you will nurture those seeds, and those seeds will germinate and grow. And you can get outside of the complacent, stagnant, comfortable position that you have been ingrained to believe is true, correct, accurate, not misleading, which is the way that they operate. Okay, and it happened through the public fool system, where they conditioned you of your mind at a very, very young age. Your parents were not forthcoming, not because they're not honest people, but because they too were indoctrinated and led to believe and ingrained to think a certain way. And my objective is to get you outside of the proverbial box, prison, jail that you have placed your mind in or allowed others to place your mind in, and think outside of the box. That's my objective, to get you to think outside of what you think you actually know or what you've been told. And I want to express this with great conviction, that there is no substitution for reading, okay? As much conviction as I have in doing all these videos and wanting to believe and hope and know that they're doing some good out there in the world, I want you to comprehend until you read it for yourself. Some of these things that I'm reading to you guys, I read 14, 15 years ago, and I still come back and reread them. There are certain books that I read at least once or twice a year just to refresh my memory, okay? And we know that hearing something one time, chances of you remembering it are slim to none. If I do a class or I make an audio video for everybody to enjoy, the chances of you picking up greater than 10% of the valuable information I lay down is slim to none. So these videos you may have to watch a few times. You may watch it one time and 6 months later be studying other things, be looking at other things, ascending of the mind on other aspects, other jurisdictions in your life, and have a eureka moment and go, oh, wait, I watched this video a while back, and that makes perfect sense, and that's connecting the dots here. I need to go back and rewatch that video again. All right? Through repetition, we begin to start to commit to memory, and through reading and reading aloud and teaching your fellow brothers and sisters and helping your other friends and family in the community and continuing to educate. The more you educate, the more you are able to articulate it, and then you'll be able to create your own documentation and stand firm on solid ground. On one end, I despise this system on a cellular level. And on the adverse side of the spectrum, I wouldn't be the man I am today had it not been for the trials, tribulations that I went through because of the system. So on one end, I despise it, and on the other end, I can appreciate it because of the man that I am today. Good times breed weak men, which is what we have typically in society now, all right? And hard times breed resilient warriors with great character, all right? And the war doesn't have to be physical, but you can't blindly waltz around and ignore it and act like it is not going on. There is a war going on, and it's a war over spirituality, for lack of a better terms. It's good versus evil. It's right versus wrong. But the important thing is, before you can actually do anything about it, we have to figure out who you are. And probably the best way of doing it is putting this question out there. It's not who you define yourself to be, because that's all adjective language. I'm a good person. I'm a great driver. I'm very caring. I'm very loving. I'm very nurturing. Well, that's all descriptive bullshit. That doesn't tell me who you are. And one of the greatest struggles that you're going to have with that question is there's no way for you to tell anybody who you are. And it's for this simple purpose and this simple principle alone. You didn't create yourself. You didn't create yourself. So you can't say who you are. You can only iterate adjective language describing who you think you are, or better yet, describing yourself, right? But that's not who you are. So the question that you need to know and commit to your mind and your heart, and the right question to ask, is who does he say you are? You see, our authority comes from a higher power. I don't care what your religious beliefs are, spirituality, our power comes from something greater than ourselves. So when you read the good book, which is a banking manual, a book on trust, and it has all the laws written in it for man. It is one of the best books in the world to read, and I don't care what denomination or nationality or perspectives or views you have on religion. I'm telling you right there, that book, if you know how to read between the lines and you know how to read it, there's some parts of the book that are meant to be taken literally. There are other times that there are parables. And then there are other sections where you have to learn and train yourself to read between the lines, because it's not always what it says, it's what it didn't say. Because again, equity acts in the negative. The law is written on your heart. It really is that simple. Honor your word, respect your elders, keep your feet and hands to yourself. Don't take what doesn't belong to you. Don't touch what doesn't belong to you. It's really that simple. That's the law. What goes up must come down. I don't care what you call it. Just know that it's a fact. It's a fact of nature. It's nature's law. Nature's God. God's law. Okay? And no matter how much you don't like that fact, it will always be a fact. Let me give you a key example. Man calls it gravity, which is nothing more than a theory. But we know whether it's called gravity or buoyancy or anything else, the fact remains, what goes up comes down. Maybe we decide to say it's not gravity anymore, it's just less density. How many people have put that theory and concept through their head? Maybe it has nothing to do with this theory of gravity. Maybe we should go to the theory of density. It's less dense, therefore it's buoyant. It's less dense, therefore it floats. We're more dense, so we can't get our fucking ass off the rock. Anyway, let's continue on. So, the present situation in America, a legal person equals a legal fiction. Okay, a person is a person, place, or thing, okay, handled in rem. It's a fiction. It can be a trust. It can be a joint partnership. It can be a cooperation or a corporation or an unincorporated corporation or an unenfranchised corporation. But at no point does it ever fit the definition of man. Okay? To include one thing is to exclude all others. When you understand that sound doctrine and principle, it's very quick to be able, it's very quick and easy to be able to separate yourself and distinguish yourself from the two jurisdictions. One being on the public side, the commercial, industrial, and agriculture, all deals with business under the executive branch. And the other side, which is the private side, natural law, God's law, the exclusive jurisdiction of equity. All right, guaranteed in a Republican form of government. One of the terms used predominantly by the present civil governments and courts in America is legal person, okay, which is a juristic person that they're using for their quasi-judicial purposes, creating resulting trust or constructive trust, okay? Just what is a legal person? Some definitions are legal person, a body of persons or an entity as a corporation considered as having many of the rights and responsibilities of natural persons. And again, natural person, is that man? Is that reality? No, that is still a fiction. That is still a fiction. When you put an adjective in front of the noun, it diminishes the noun. Okay, and person is a noun. It's a thing. And then when they put natural in front of it, they put an adjective in front of the word person, which makes this less than the noun, which is a noun, the person. Then they put an adjective, a descriptor, in front of the noun, and that makes the natural person less than the noun known as person. So people run around saying natural person, thinking that that puts them on a higher pedestal, but nothing is greater than man, except for the Heavenly Father himself. So I hope you're understanding this. When they talk about natural person, that is still a fucking fiction. And especially the capacity to sue and be sued. This is all underneath the 14th Amendment that was never properly passed, never properly ratified. And even if it was done by a de facto, defunct corporate body, corporate entity under the Reorganization Act, and it was no longer the Congress of we the people. This 14th Amendment is an offer to contract. And the Supreme Court proves it by their lack of taking action against the constitutionality of the way that it was not properly ratified. It was a military hostile coup and takeover of, I believe, if my recollection serves me right, 10 lower states. Tennessee, Texas, and a couple others, Alabama, where they overthrew the senators. All right? Takes 3/5 or 3/4, I think it's 3/5 of the states at the time concurrent to agree for it to pass the resolution and be considered an amendment and then voted upon. And that's not what happened. And we can prove that because when you go and you look at the 13th Amendment that was passed by them, the lower states helped affirm the passage of the 13th Amendment. And again, it's after the Reorganization Act of 1871, so I want you to understand that even though they passed that alleged amendment and act to their Constitution, they had abandoned the organic Constitution, and that's why I stress so vehemently that you only use the First Amendment through the 10th Amendment. Are there some good things in the 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 19th, 20th Amendment? Sure, you might use the language of it, but I wouldn't quote it as an amendment if you're planning on standing on solid land, solid foundation. I'd use the First Amendment through the 10th Amendment. All right? The 10th Amendment is where your juristic person exists. And for those of you having a hard time wrapping your head around this whole person thing and where it came from, it was already in the organic Constitution. I'll go ahead and direct you to the Fourth Amendment. The people have a right to be secure in their persons, houses, papers, and effects. All right? Person is a conduit for you to engage in commerce with. All obligations are obligations of the United States. So saith the Congress. I didn't say that shit. They did. I simply go to the archivist and I read the congressional record in the House and the Senate and the Congress assembled, and I simply read exactly what they instituted to be law. So the Supreme Court says, look, the 14th Amendment, that's a political issue. We're not going to rule on it. Okay? You got to take that back up with Congress, the House of Representatives and the Senate. We're not going to make a judicial ruling on it. Well, the Supreme Court dropped the ball. Or the one that proposed that the 14th Amendment wasn't properly ratified dropped the ball because they didn't make the proper argument, per se. Okay? Because truly, the judiciary does have the ability to look into the constitutionality of the passage of the act. Excuse me, the amendment. Amendment is different than an act. Acts are not law. And when you read the 10th Amendment, you very quickly understand no ex post facto law shall be passed. No ex post facto law. The Congress is the only one that makes the law. The legislator creates bills of attainder for those who subject themselves to it by either volunteering or becoming a part of the corporation, by taking an oath and therefore becoming foreign to the union of states and becoming the servants of the people, which is a very prestigious position so long as they're not scoundrels when they get in there. If they're truly serving the people, a servant is a very noble position. So, let's get back into it. Person, a human being, a natural person. Again, I've already expressed to you, when you put an adjective, a descriptor in front of person, you've diminished the noun. So this is less than a trust. This is less than a co-op. This is less than a corporation or a unenfranchised corporation or a corporation in and of itself. Natural person is diminished. It's diminishing the noun. A corporation, an artificial person. Remember, that which is not included is excluded, ladies and gentlemen. Does this say man? Is human being a man? No. Hue is color. HU is color. Hue. What hue is that for eyelash or whatever mascara, whatever the fuck it is the ladies wear on their face. The whale sperm mixed with bat guano they rub all over themselves playing Halloween 357 days a year. All right? And I know it's 356, according to the new calendar anyway. A human, again, is not a man. All right? Man, what the question is, what does he say you are? He's the creator, he's the author, he's the source of authority, he's the law creator. What does he say you are? He says you are a man, M-A-N. And man is plural in that context. Man and woman. W-O before the word man is for the man. That's what W-O-M-A-N actually means, for the man. It's beautiful when you start to speak to people who really know what's going on, and some of the theologians that are out there, that their IQs are off the charts, and they don't just study biblical theory and theology and biblical science, but they also study the art of language and etymology. It's beautiful. So W-O-M-A-N means for the man. That's what it actually means. And when you go back to biblical scriptures, why did the Heavenly Father create Eve? For Adam. But you see, Heavenly Father didn't take the bone out of Adam's foot to make the woman below the man. And he didn't take and make the woman from Adam's hair or cranium or jawline, so she's not above the man, from the rib, equal alongside the man, to work in harmony and unison, to be fruitful, to multiply, to do great things, to be about his good works. Beautiful thing. So human, again, is a color of man. We're still in the fiction. Person, a human being, a natural person, a corporation, an artificial person. Corporations are treated as persons in many legal situations. Also, the word person includes corporations in most definitions in this dictionary. 3, any other being. A being. Is a being a man? No. All right? Entitled to sue as a legal entity. A legal entity, again, ladies and gentlemen, is a fiction. This whole thing screams fiction. Okay? A government, an association, a group of trustees. 4, the plural of person is persons, not people. What's that Constitution say again? What's that Declaration of Independence say again? We the people. What's the 10th Amendment about? We the people. What's the preamble about? We the people. See that word? Orrin's Dictionary of Law, West Group, 1999. Person, an entity with legal rights and existence, including the ability to sue and be sued. Okay? How did they get the ability with entities to sue and be sued? That's commerce. That's war. Okay? That's industrial, agricultural, and commercial. All right? That's all underneath the executive branch. It's all business. And the 14th Amendment bolsters it. And the United States versus Citizens United was even more of an atrocity. Okay? The United States versus Citizens United made it so basically lobbyists and corporations can pick and choose who's going to be at the helm of this corporation under Title 28, United States Code 3002, 15A, B, and C. Citizens United, along with the 14th Amendment, gave corporations privileges and immunities which look like rights, but are not rights, because only man has rights. Only nature has rights. Okay? All the corporations are fictions. They exist as a constructive concept on paper and paper only. And of course, within your mind. And you have to be able to distinguish the difference between the jurisdiction of reality and fiction. Person, an entity with legal rights, okay? Legal rights. That's privileges and immunities. Legal rights are not unalienable rights. I need you guys to comprehend the difference. This is privileges and immunities. Man giveth, man can most certainly taketh away. Proof in point. How often do they change the rules and regulations on taxes and policies and procedures all the time? Why? Because they're the author, which means they're the source of the authority, which means they can do whatever the fuck they want. And legal rights, again, is nothing more than privileges and immunities. So they create privileges and immunities and all that great shit. And then sometimes it doesn't benefit them to allow corporations or persons to have certain privileges and immunities. So they go ahead and they change it. You want to know what doesn't change? Natural law, God's law, the exclusive jurisdiction of equity. What should be done shall be done. It's either wrong or it's right. There's no in between. Okay? Person, an entity with privileges and immunities, and existence including the ability to sue and be sued, to sign contracts, to receive gifts, to appear in court either by themselves, which they can never fucking do, or by a lawyer, and generally other powers incidental to the full expression of the entity in law. Individuals are persons. Individuals, remember, that which is not included is excluded. Does this say man? No, it does not. So an individual is no different than a corporation, a joint business venture, a co-op operation, a trust. All right? These are all things in rem, are persons in law unless they are minors or under some kind of other incapacity, such as court finding of mental incapacity. Well, can a corporate person or thing have a mental capacity? No. No, it can't. Show me your corporate charter, your articles of association, articles of incorporation, and bylaws, and put them down on a desk in front of me, and I want to see if they have any mental faculties at all to be able to speak, act, do for themselves, eat, sleep, shit for themselves without anybody else touching it as an agent operating on behalf of a principal. So, do persons have mental faculties or capacity? No, they don't. Okay? Only man. Man has a mental capacity, right? We can speak, think, hear, but the corporate entity, the person, cannot. I slammed a attorney and CASA worker on this sound doctrine and principle alone right here. Absolutely smoked them because of how they wrote their instruments. CASA feels, CASA thinks, CASA believes, CASA visited. Really? CASA, first of all, is an acronym. You look fucking mentally handicapped at this point. I'm starting to judge whether or not you could even judge anyone's character, being that you look fucking incompetent, inept, and grossly insane. But I don't have an MD in front of my name. So far be it from me to critique you at this point. But I think, in my humblest of opinions, if you're having conversation with inanimate things and objects that only exist in a figment of man's imagination and a construct on a piece of fucking paper, you've just impeached yourself. And you swore to it under the pains and penalties of perjury. CASA feels, CASA thinks, CASA believes, CASA visited. Really? An acronym? An acronym visited the family? Fuck out of here. And you swore to it under the pains and penalties of perjury? So you're committing perjury? Or you're just batshit crazy? Which one is it? Leavenworth or the loony bin? Which one you want to go to? See how that works? Many laws give certain powers to persons, which in almost all instances includes business organizations that have been formally registered, such as partnerships, corporations, or associations. Duheim's Law Dictionary. Person, noun. It's a noun. Latin persona, okay? You ever heard of in personam jurisdiction? In personam jurisdiction is still a fiction, okay? It's still an in rem thing. Said to be compounded of per, through, or by, and sonus, sound, a Latin word signifying primarily a mask used by actors on the stage. People have no idea how inspirational Shakespeare was to the whole creation of this fictitious system. See, to be engaged in commerce is to wear a mask, is to have on a facade. Have you ever heard the excuse, I was just doing my job? They knew morally, ethically, okay, what they were doing was wrong, but they did it anyway. And how were they able to go home and go to sleep at night? Well, one, they used a false and fictitious entity as a shield, as a facade. For example, state trooper, sheriff, police officer, okay, here to serve and protect. Oh, they're serving and protecting the fuck out of the corporate entity that pays them. You bet your sweet ass, but they ain't serving and protecting you. All right? A lot of it's being done out of ignorance. They actually don't know a damn thing. I've been studying this for 15 years. Those people go through 16 weeks of training. All of a sudden, they're experts at law, enforcing the law, all while absconding from their oath and their duty they've never even read. What's up, my brother Keith? Love you, Keith. Good to see you. Webster's 1828 Dictionary. A corporation incorporated under de jure law. There's a difference between de jure and de facto. Okay? There's a difference between ministerial administrators and administrative law judges and administrative law clerks, judge pro temps, all that stuff. All right? Commissioners. That's all on the de facto. Real judges do not make rulings on statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. That's all part of the corporate construct and corporate fiction. A corporation incorporated under the de jure law, i.e. by bona fide express contract between real beings capable, real men and women capable of contracting. What are the prerequisites to enter into a contract? And remember, this contract is protected by the 10th Amendment, or Article 1, Section 10. Okay? The governments, whether quasi-governmental or government in the de jure, cannot impede the obligation of contract so long as that contract is lawful. So what are the elements in order for man and woman to contract? They must be of competent, sane, sound mind, competent to handle their affairs over all men. When I say man, I mean men and women both. They must be of age of majority. And they must not be under any influence or coercion or threat or intimidation. And full disclosure must be had. All the terms and conditions to the contract, meaning the words, must be clearly defined and laid out. It must be mutually beneficial for all parties involved. It must have a start date. It must have an ending date. Value and consideration must be given. And a performance is due and owing. That's contract. Capable of contracting is a legal fact. Using the juristic artifice of presumptions or assumptions, a device known as a legal fiction, implied contract, constructive trust, implied trust, or a resulting trust, Another entirely separate entity can be created using the name of a bona fide corporate legal fiction. The name of the corporation, by altering the name of the corporation into some other corrupted format, such as all caps letters or abbreviated words in the name, the corporation exists in law, but has arbitrarily been assigned another name. The other part of contract is it cannot be written vague or ambiguously. In order for a law to have force, weight, and effect of law, it must be clearly and concisely written. It cannot be vague and ambiguous. No such corporation legal fiction, nor any valid law, nor even a valid legal fiction can be created under the law of necessity, i.e., under no law. Likewise, the arbitrary use of the legal fiction artifice of right of presumption, remember, this only happens in admiralty maritime jurisdiction, okay, the law of mercantile, Roman civil law, English common law, okay, over unwary, uninformed, and usually blindly trusting people. Okay, what happens when it's uninformed? See, consent by the consent of the governed. Well, in order to be consenting to being governed, full disclosure has to be had. Are they giving you full disclosure? No. Is that contract that they're enticing you into, is it binding upon you? How do we make it void if it's just voidable? How do we void it? Did we give our informed consent? Okay, people talk about child support all the time. Look, it's a presumption and assumption. It's lodged under Title 42, which is not enacted into positive law. Okay? It's underneath the executive branch. It's quasi-fucking judicial. Prove up the contract, or here's my invoice for $30 million, you shit stains. You either have my wedding signature on a contract I knowingly, willingly, and intelligently entered into, or you don't. And everything on that contract better include the full fucking disclosure. Let me tell you something. They don't tell you that when they presume and assume you to have agreed to this alleged contract, that they would start parent locator services and job placement services and garnishment of wages and garnishment of income and garnishment of tax returns and garnishment of lottery winnings and invade your privacy by being able to track and monitor your phone. They don't tell you all that shit. So it's voidable. It's voidable. Not just void, but voidable. And then you get to collect on the backside. Part of understanding this here helps you do that. Over unwary, uninformed, and usually blindly trusting people. That's a denial of due process of law. Protected our right, the due process of law, to be fully informed and availed of all the information is protected under the Fifth Amendment. Can be legitimately exercised under no law. Anything whatsoever done under alleged authority of naked criminal aggression, which is called domestic terrorism. They're forbidden from engaging in what they're doing. They're violating their oath, taking their income under false pretenses, which is theft by way of false promises. Not to mention treason, sedition, insurrection, i.e., law of necessity can be rendered legitimate. Maxims of law describing necessity included. Necessity has no law. Plowed 18 and 15 VIN ABR 534, 22 IBID 540. In time of war, laws are silent. Cicero. Okay? And this is what's going on right now. They're at war with the American people. All right? And they have been at war with the American people for a long time because they're engaged in commerce. No existent law, the legal condition that universally prevails in the official system of the world today, means that no lawful basis exists upon which anything can be created or be made to transpire, upon which basis allegiance and obedience can be legitimately demanded. All men are created equal, ladies and gentlemen. But your fictions sure the fuck aren't. Your fictions sure aren't fucking equal. All right? They created the game. They're the master puppets. They're the author and the authority of that reorganization and this SKV Act and the creation of all these little trinkets and these little game pieces that play on the board. You got to understand the doctrine of Inium Sodom. If you walk in and claim to be a thing, game on. Game on. Acting under the law of necessity, i.e. lawlessness, allows complete and total right of everyone to disregard any and all alleged assertions of any lawful, verifiable, and legitimate jurisdiction over anything or anyone. That's that quasi-jurisdiction I'm talking about. Quasi-judicial, quasi-in rem. All right? It's not judicial. It's quasi. It's like. It's similar to, but it is not. That's part of that quasi-government, that Title 28, 3002, 15 A, B, and C. The United States is a corporation. All those state ofs, when they say state of Nebraska, state of Alabama, state of Mississippi, state of Michigan, state of Texas, state of North Dakota, state of South Dakota, those are subsidiary corporations of the parent corporation known as the United States. There are two jurisdictions running concurrently, ladies and gentlemen, and it is very important for you to understand that. Anyone acting against anyone under such non-law is self-confessing to be a naked criminal aggressor engaged in domestic terrorism and domestic violence, engaged in human trafficking, the trafficking of persons, kidnapping, false arrest, false imprisonment, okay? Peonage, bondage, slavery, involuntary servitude, violation of the treaty against Article 10, violation of the Hague Convention, violation of the Hobbs Act, violation of the Clayton Act. Okay, they're in violation of the RICO. All right? They're plundering, looting, stealing, piracy on the land, privateering, ladies and gentlemen. That's what they're doing. And con man who has forfeited all credibility and right to demand allegiance, obedience, or compliance with any jurisdiction he might assert. They are using a foreign jurisdiction on our land to drag us into dry dock and charge us up underneath their foreign law, ex post facto law, and attempting to make us liable for it so they can generate bonds and securities. That's what they're doing, to generate new revenue in the economy. And those statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations are directly tied to the penal code. And on the back end of the penal code, each one of them has a value associated with it. Like ordering a fancy steak at a fancy restaurant, they typically don't have prices on the menu. And that's exactly how they're running their game. If you, as a real being, as a man or woman, are in real law and it is impossible for an attorney or a judge to recognize or access it, you are not and cannot be made subject to by them in their foreign jurisdiction that by all rights belongs in the territory for which it was created, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 10, and no other use is authorized. The crucial issue is then how to notice them of your position and standing. A person created under de jure law with the person's identifying name appearing as prescribed by law and according to the rules of English grammar is a legal fact. It's also a lawful fact. A corrupted alter ego version of that name, manufactured under the legal fiction of right of presumption and assumption, will have credibility only so long as the presumption remains unchallenged. The rule of the world is that anything and everything skates unless you bust it. Or, in the game I like to call it bullshit. We call the game bullshit. And the judge goes, I think you need to watch your language. And the attorney goes, no, I think he's actually, Your Honor, I think he's meaning to object. If you could just use the word object, I think, Your Honor wouldn't be so, could you just use the word object? And so he starts talking again, and I yell bullshit again. And he goes, I don't think you understand. I think, Your Honor, I really think he's trying to say objection. No, I was calling bullshit. I call it what it is. I'm allergic to bullshit. You got to have a set of fucking testicles every now and again, because the First Amendment guarantees you your what? The freedom to express yourself any way you see fit. They're my servants. I don't answer to them, they answer to me. And that doesn't mean that I think less of them by any means, because the position, so long as they're doing it properly, is noble. It's an honorable thing. And you can tell really quick if you got a tyrant sitting on the bench. If you just start saying things like bullshit or fuck off, and they say, we won't tolerate that language, we have a quorum in here. Well, that'll show you real quick that they don't honor their oath. You have the right to express yourself and say whatever the hell you want when you want. Doesn't mean there are not consequences for it. However, if you're to the point where you got to say things like that, obviously you're dealing with tyrants and you know it. If you got to express yourself in that fashion with that type of connotation, well, you know you're already dealing with tyrants, and that's why you're using that language, right? All right. They like to get all high and mighty when you use language like that, and I like to put them right back in their fucking place. For the same reason a dog licks his testicles, because he can, all right? And you can too. Legal or lawful. It is crucial to define the difference between legal and lawful. These are two very distinct and separate jurisdictions. The generic Constitution references genuine law. It also speaks of equity, time and time again, okay? And the way that the organic Constitution was created, and the constitutions that are organic for the Union of States, okay? It was by divine intervention for the greater good of all. It is a constructive trust if you know how to read it. Okay? It meets all the elements and the requirements of a trust. And the preamble exemplifies that in such a beautiful way. Trust law being the highest law in the land. That's exactly what constitutions are. They're a trust indenture. They're the law of the land. And the constitutions organically created were ordained. The only one that can ordain is the Heavenly Father, the power greater than we the people. Ordained. And if you go read those constitutions, people say, well, that's great and all, but how does that help us in other countries? I'll tell you right now, those constitutions were drawn up equitably. Okay? God's law, nature's God. Those sound doctrines and principles within those amendments reign true on all the land. The present civil authorities and their courts use the word legal. Is there a difference in the meaning? The following is quoted from a dictionary of law. Lawful, in accordance with the law of the land. You see that? Law of the land. You go to court, they say, yeah, we're here because you violated the law. Okay, great. We're here to talk about law. Yeah, we're here to talk about law. You violated the law. Okay, so go ahead. I'm gonna go ahead and read the charges into the record. Okay, for the record, you violated Penal Code 556776, Nebraska Revised Statute 812. Wait a minute. Is that the law? I thought you said that I violated the law. We're in here and you're going on about things I have no knowledge of. Statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. I thought we were here because I violated the law. Somebody's making a claim. Somebody's pressing a claim saying I caused them harm, damage, loss, and a hardship. Under the Sixth Amendment, who the fuck is the one doing that? I'm invoking the Sixth. I'm not waiving any rights here. See, the nature and the cause of the transaction changes when you start to realize that the statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations have penal bonds and penal sums attached to them for their fictitious monetary system that they created, and they're hypothecating your credit into existence and trying to either get you to stand in as surety, use your exemption to float it, or they're just going to warehouse your body as surety when you fall into dishonor because you don't realize what type of venue you're in. You're in a revenue venue. They have revenued you. And isn't it neat how revenue and revenue are spelled the same? Lawful, in accordance with the law of the land, according to the law, permitted, sanctioned, or justified by law. Lawful properly implies a thing comfortable to or enjoyed by law. Legal, a thing in the form or after the manner of law or binding by law. A writ or warrant issuing, a writ or a warrant, a check, okay, a put call, all right, what was the other one for warrant? It'll come back to me. A writ or warrant issuing from any court under color of law is a legal process, however defective. Okay? So it's a legal process, a simulated legal process, a quasi-judicial process, a mock trial, if you will. And the warrant is actually a check, all right, the funds that they're in constructive possession of the credits, which are a liability on the credit side of the ledger, which are a liability to them. And the debits on the other side are an asset to you. If you come in as surety to satisfy their charges, you have the right to fill the roles of the creditor. Because they've created a constructive trust to generate revenue. I talked earlier about 9/11. Well, the reason they concocted 9/11 was so they could create more statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations to charge people up underneath. Create new penal sums and penal bonds to launch to it. Don't believe me? Go look at the Defense Authorization Act. Go look at the Patriot Act. What do you think all that was really about? Okay? To generate more penal sums and penal bonds and statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. Now they even have insurance on domestic terrorism for all your cities and municipalities, and municipal corporations and counties. Why do you think that is? See, it didn't dawn on me until a few years ago. I always knew you couldn't tax people into prosperity. You damn sure can't legislate people into morality. So what the hell is the need for all these? I mean, if you've ever been to a law library, it is something, it is a spectacle. And there's no one man on this earth that could possibly digest and know all that information in and out. No way. So what's it all for? And then when you start to see the monetary system, you start to see what it's for. All right? You start to understand that's how they generate new funds in the economy, by getting you to come in and contract with them. Legal, Latin, legalis, pertaining to the understanding, the exposition, the administration, the science, and the practice of law. See, they're practicing it. Because law doesn't need practice. The law just needs enforced. What they're doing in legal land is practicing. They're at law versus being in law. There's a difference. As the legal profession, legal advice, legal blanks, newspapers, implied or imputed in law, opposed to actual legal, looks more to the letter form appearance and lawful to the spirit. So you got the letter of the law and the spirit of the law. When they're in harmony, we have law. All right? But very, very seldom does legal ever have any spirit in it. Substance, content of the law, legal is more appropriate for conformity to positive rules of law. Rules of law, not law of the land, rules of the man-made creation of law called legal. Lawful for accord with ethical principle Legal imports rather that the form's appearance, it's military, it's all about structure and form of law are observed, that the proceeding is correct in method, that rule prescribed have been obeyed, lawful, that the right is act full in substance, that moral quality is secured. Legal is the legal is the antithesis of equitable and the equivalent of constructive. To Abbott's Law Dictionary 24, bold emphasis added. Legal matters administrate, conform to, and follow rules. They are equitable in nature and are implied, presumed, rather than actual expressed. Now, here's where I'm going to disagree with this. Legal matters administrate, conform to, and follow rules. They are equitable by characteristic, not by nature. Okay? Equitable by nature is on the private side. Equitable by characteristic is on the legal side. So I would disagree with this here. They are equitable in nature and are implied, presumed, rather than actually expressed. A legal process can be defective in law. Notice how they said in law, not at law. This accords with the previous discussions of legal fictions and color of law. To be legal, a matter does not have to follow the law. Instead, it conforms to and follows the rules or forms of law. This is why the federal and state rules of civil procedure and criminal procedure are cited in every court petition so as to conform to legal requirements of the specific juristic persons named, ergo, state of Georgia, or the U.S. federal government that rule the courts. Lawful matters are ethically enjoined in the law of the land, the law of the people, and are actual in nature, not implied. This is why whatever true law was upheld by the organic constitution has no bearing or authority in the present day legal courts. It is impossible for anyone in authority today to access or even take cognizance of true law, since authority is the law of necessity. Title 12, United States Code, they were going to point out 95. And in reality, if you really want to know the law, they repealed Title 12, United States Code 95, 95A, to Title 50, 4305B2. That's still not the law. Title 50 is the military jurisdiction. Title 12 is banking, okay? And they moved it to Title 50, 4305B2, and that's still not the law. You want to know where you find the law? You want to know where you find this at? 40, Statute at Large, 411, Section 7E, right there from the fucking Trading with the Enemy Act. All right? The trust indenture of their corporate fiction. All right? They're at war. Commerce is war. So it's not 12 U.S.C. 95. It's not Title 50, 4305B2. It's 40 Statute at Large 411, the Trading with the Enemy Act of October 6th, 1917. Therefore, it would appear that the meaning of the word legal is color of law, has the semblance of law, looks like law, but is not law, has no obligation to enforce and no obligation or duty to obey. A term which Black's Law Dictionary, 5th edition, page 241, defines as color of law, the appearance or semblance, without the substance, of legal right, misuse of power, possessed by virtue of state law, and made possible only because wrongdoer is clothed with authority of state in action taken under color of law. How do you hold them accountable when they're doing this? We take them out of the at-law side and we bring them into the in-law side using their first, middle, and last name and holding them accountable and removing all cloaks and subterfuge and statutes that they use for cloaks and subterfuge in order to use a simulated legal process with a sham pleadings, unsworn, unverified pleadings by unknown, unidentified, false and fictitious names. that are unregistered by unknown or unidentified false and fictitious agents and agency, that are not compliant with the oath of office, that are not compliant with Title 5 33331, not compliant with Title 5 33332, not compliant with Title 5 33333, not compliant with Title 4 101, not compliant with Title 28 453, not compliant with the amnesty oath. All right, they're non-compliant with the title. They do not have SF61 or SF61B on record. They don't have their foreign registration statement on record and their certificate of good standing from the IRS to do business on our land or administer the decedent estates. All right. Under Title 26, United States Code 6903, 7603, Title 26, 2032, AE11, Title 26, 2203, 2603, 2602, 2001, and 2002. Anybody in constructive possession of decedent estate property is liable on the transfer taxes for holding the decedent estate property. All right, they don't have any of this stuff. You disqualify them. You prove it. You demand it. Not only that, okay? You turn around and you're going to hit them with a demur, a common law abatement. We're going to prove that this is a trust. We're going to prove that if we come in as surety and use our exemption for what they did, which was violate the law, violate the Hobbs Act, violate the RICO, violate Sarbanes-Oxley, engaged in sedition, insurrection, seditious behavior, espionage, mixed war against the Constitution, mixed war against the people, breach of trust, breach of oath of office, dereliction of duty, malfeasance in office, honest services fraud. Yeah? Dropping the gold, dropping the gems as usual. I hope you guys are writing those down. That's what they're engaged in. Money laundering, securities fraud, unregistered securities, human trafficking, the trafficking of persons, the trafficking of children, the trafficking of your elders, identity theft. And the best thing is you can hold them accountable on the personal side under their unlimited, indefeasible liability. Commercial, civil, criminal, and personal liability. Counterfeiting. Damn right. Counterfeiting. That's another great one. It's right there in the Constitution. Anytime you can find the violation of the law in the Constitution, that's the one I like. Counterfeiting is absolutely in the Constitution. Privateering. Piracy on the land. I mean, the list just goes on and on and on. But before you can enforce any of that, you have to understand the basic principles, the foundation. And most of all, you have to know who he says you are. And most important, what you are not. Executive orders rule the land. The current situation in that legalism has usurped, otherwise known as usufruct, and engulfed the law. The administration of legal rules, codes, and statutes now prevail instead of the actual law, only because the American people are asleep at the wheel. Only because we are complicit. Only because we refuse to say something. Remember, in maritime admiralty, law of mercantile, law of merchant, it's a presumption and assumption. You have to defeat the presumption and assumption. How are you going to do that? Common law abatement, demur, memorandum, judicial notices, testimony in the form of an affidavit, and then be deposed on that testimony in the form of an affidavit signed underneath Jurat, with a caveat on it saying if nobody else comes forward and states to the contrary, then we must presume and assume this testimony in the form of an affidavit under Jurat is true, correct, accurate, and not misleading. You think a DA is ever going to be able to overcome you knowing that? Abso-fucking-lutely not. The fact they're denying you the First Amendment, the Fourth Amendment, the Third Amendment, the Fifth Amendment, the Sixth Amendment, the Seventh Amendment, the Eighth Amendment, the 10th Amendment. They're violating all that. Why the Third Amendment? Because they're allowing foreign rogue agents on our land, usurping power otherwise not delegated to them through usufruct. Okay? Trying to lay snares to drag you into their foreign dry docks under foreign law, ex post facto law. They know what they're doing. They're not fucking stupid. I've been at this for 15 years. These judges, they go to judgeship schools. They go to seminars. They go to classes. They know this shit. They're not fucking retarded. Some of them are not very intelligent. There are some that don't know. Typically, your low rent agents at the lowest level of the inferior courts. Okay? But the higher ranking officials, they absolutely know what I'm talking about. Equivocally, without question. And they bend over not because they're scared of me. They do what's right because it's the law. And they're expected to uphold the law. Private administrative process. They're arbitrary constructs existing only because of the actions of the people acting on fictitious self-created authority, i.e. no authority. They are authorized and enforced by legal executive orders. Executive orders are not lawful and never have been. As you read the following, be aware of the word code and administration. Where is this administrative branch? You see, in the Constitution, we created the judiciary, the Congress, and the executive branch. Where is this elusive administrative branch? Let me help you out. It's lodged underneath the executive branch, which is in charge of what? Industry, agriculture, and commerce. Industry, agriculture, and commerce, which means everybody that's operating underneath that administrative branch is quasi-judicial, quasi-governmental. They're creating rules and regulations for their corporate defunct entity and attempting to get you to enter into contract with them and subject yourself to them and agree that you violated some benign statute, code, city ordinance, rule, regulation, calling it law, while denying you due process of law. Looking at the United States Census 2000 reveals that the legal authority for this census comes from Office of Management and Budget. OMB, approval number 06070-856. The OMB, the Office of Management and Budget, is a part of the executive office. Okay? Management and Budget. Management and budget of crimes? Criminal activity? That's because it's not criminal. It's civil in nature. It's presumed and assumed that everybody agrees to be bound by the statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations. And by your silence, you consent. Consensus 2000 is authorized, carried out, controlled, enforced, and implemented by who? The Commander-in-Chief. It's not the President, it's the Commander-in-Chief. The executive branch of the federal government. Let me tell you something. Under the Reorganization Act of 1871, ladies and gentlemen, there is no more judiciary. There is no more Congress. They're all underneath the executive branch doing business, baby. It's business. Functions as it has been since 1861. In the lawless realm of necessity under military occupation, War Powers Act, Executive Order 100 Lieber Code, because as I said before, there was a declaration of war issued, but no proclamation that ended it, and the Treaty of Peace and the Treaty of Paris weren't properly introduced to end the war. The war could only be ended by proclamation, just like the national banking emergency can only be ended by proclamation of the president, which is the commander-in-chief, which is now even more degenerate than when it commenced under Lincoln. In fact, the executive office of the president, commander-in-chief, is under the executive branch, controls the entire nation through various departments and agencies affecting justice, communications, health, energy, transportation, education, defense, treasury, labor, agricultural, mails, and much more, through a myriad of executive orders, proclamations, policies, and decisions. When they amended the Trading with the Enemy Act, see, the commander-in-chief, the president, fell into the capacity of commander-in-chief during time of war. And during time of war, he doesn't need congressional oversight or permission from the legislature, House of Representatives, and the Congress assembled to do anything. But in 1933, what did they do? They expanded the jurisdiction of the commander-in-chief and gave him power even in time of national emergency. Well, since that date, 1933, March 4th of 1933 through March, 9th, because the banks open on the 10th, there's been a declared national emergency. All right? So, we're under the Trading with the Enemy Act. Every U.S. president since Lincoln has claimed his authority for these executive orders on Article 2, Section 2 of the U.S. Constitution. The president shall be commander-in-chief of the Army and Navy of the United States and of the militias of the several states. When called into the actual service of the United States, he shall have power by and with the advice and consent of the Senate to make treaties, provide 2/3 of the Senate present concur, and he shall nominate, and by and with the advice and the consent of the Senate shall appoint ambassadors, other public ministers, and councils, judges of the Supreme Court, and all other officers of the United States whose appointments are not herein otherwise provided for, and which shall be established by law, but the Congress may by law vest the appointment of such inferior officers as they think proper in the president alone, in the courts of law, or in the heads of departments. What did they do? What did they do? They turned around and they got your auntie, your brother, your uncle, your cousin, your sister to join their ranks as foreign agents. And this is why you don't recognize them as a foreign army standing on your soil, because they walk like you, they talk like you, they act like you, they watch the football games with you, they watch the baseball games with you, you have Christmas and Thanksgiving and all these days together, right? And so you don't even recognize that what they did was take people from this land and turn around and convert them into revenue collectors and revenue generators, predicated on statutes, codes, city ordinances, rules, and regulations that they have convinced our uncles, our brothers, our sisters, our cousins, our granddads, our grandmas are law. They turned around and made them police officers, judges, prosecuting attorneys, governors, senators, Congress members, right? House of Representative members. Our own flesh and blood, our own families. And they turn them into foreign agents, and that's why it's so hard for the American people to actually see what's going on. Because they walk like you, they talk like you, they're a parasite. And it all stems from the Roman Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C., the District of Columbia. When I say this is a brilliantly articulated and executed design and plan, it's almost unexplainable. The system that they have created. It leaves me speechless at times. Unable to sleep because I just can't fathom who came up with this. And it wasn't just a single individual that created this whole shit show. This was a collaboration and cooperation amongst very, very intelligent intellects that have managed to imprison the minds of man with this construct. Let's continue on. In reality, the Congress is completely bypassed. Since the Senate was convened in April 1861 by President Executive Order Number 2, not by lawful constitutional due process, there is no United States Congress. The current Senate and House of Representatives are, like everything, colorable: color of Senate, color of office, color of authority, color of law, under the direct authority of the executive office of the president, which is the commander-in-chief. The president legally needs neither the consent nor the vote from the Senate, simply because the Senate's legal authority to meet exists only by executive order. Ambassadors, public ministers, consuls, federal judges, and all officers of the United States are appointed by and under authority of the executive office of the commander-in-chief, otherwise known as the president. The Federal Registry is an executive function. The first official act of every incoming president is to reaffirm the War Powers Act. He must do so, or he is devoid of power to function in office. The war powers are set forth in the Trading with the Enemy Act of October 6, 1917. When I keep telling you guys 40 Statute at Large 411 Section 7E is so fucking important, it really is a master key once you understand it. And the amendatory acts, remember, acts do not amend the organic constitution. The organic de jure government is still there, ladies and gentlemen. Of March 9, 1933, the Banking Relief Act. In the amendatory act, every citizen of the United States was made an enemy of the government. Now that you know under Title 28, 3002-15A, that the United States is nothing more than a corporation, can you be a citizen of Walmart? Can you be a citizen of McDonald's? Can you be a citizen of co-op? Can you be a citizen of a trust? The answer to that is no. So what are these U.S. citizens they're talking about? The U.S. citizens, ladies and gentlemen, are the artificial ens legis entities. Okay? Those are U.S. citizens. They carry the primary active degree of fault when they charge up those U.S. citizens. And those U.S. citizens do have a residence. Okay? They are part of that construct. They created it. Okay? You merely have the beneficial use of it while carrying zero liability once you learn how this works. Zero. All obligations are obligations of the United States. And again, I would implore and encourage you to go read Executive Order 100, Article 2, Article 31, and Article 38, and follow that with 40 Statute at Large 411, Section 7E, in conjunction with 48 Statute at Large 112. Federal Reserve, IMF, ETL creditors in bankruptcy. They're under Chapter 11 bankruptcy. If they're insolvent, how can they enforce the law? You have to be solvent, okay? To bring a claim, you can't be insolvent. You must have something to lose or something to put on the table, all right? Any insolvent defunct corporation running around as quasi-governmental or quasi-judicial is in fact nothing more than a de facto organization masquerading around as government. The Federal Reserve, IMF, ETL creditors in bankruptcy who have conquered the country by their great paper money banking swindle. For the past 65 years, every presidential executive order has become purported law simply by its publication in the Federal Register, which is operated by the Office of the Federal Register, OFR, in 1935. Consequently, after 1933, right, the OFR was established by Federal Register Act. Okay, remember, acts do not abolish or amend the organic constitution. These are acts that apply to the new constitution under the Reorganization Act. The purported authority for the OFR is found within the United States Code, Title 44, at Chapter 15, subsection 1506, Administrative Committee of the Federal Register, Establishment and Composition, Powers and Duties. The Administrative Committee of the Federal Register shall consist of the Archivist of the United States or acting archivist of who shall be chairman and officer of the Department of Justice designated by the Attorney General. The Attorney General in Black's Law Dictionary is the Esquire of the Crown, and the public printer or acting public printer, the director of the Federal Register, shall act as secretary of the committee. The committee shall prescribe, with the approval of the commander-in-chief, otherwise known as the president, regulations for carrying out this chapter. Notice that the entire administrative committee of the Federal Register is comprised of officers of the federal government who appoints all federal officers. The commander-in-chief, aka the president, does. This act also gives the commander-in-chief, the president, the authority to decree all the regulations to carry out the act. By this monopoly, the executive establishes, control, regulates, and enforces the federal government without need for any approval from the Senate or the House of Representatives or the Congress assembled or anyone else other than his undisclosed superiors. He operates without any accountability to the people at all. How can this be considered lawful or constitutional following the law of the land? In 1917, President Woodrow Wilson couldn't persuade Congress to agree with his desire to arm United States vessels traveling hostile German waters before the United States entered World War I. So Wilson simply invoked policy through a presidential executive order. President Franklin Delano Roosevelt issued executive order number 9066 in December 1941, forcing 100,000 Americans of Japanese descent to be rounded up and placed in concentration camps. Ladies and gentlemen, that's exactly what FEMA camps are. They're for U.S. citizens. They're going to start rounding people up before too long. Okay? Lindsey Graham said the homeland is a battlefield. And before the untimely demise of Justice Scalia, he said very soon United States citizens will be rounded up and put into FEMA camps. FEMA camp is another politically nice, correct way of saying concentration camps. While all their property was confiscated, is it any wonder that the Congress, with the president legally controls, did not impeach President William Jefferson Clinton when the evidence for impeachment was overwhelming? On that note, why is it that attorney presidents have used executive orders the most? Who but an attorney would know and understand legal rules the best? Sadly, they enforce what's legal and ignore what's lawful. In fact, they have no access to what is lawful, since the entity of their authority, which is ethically and existently suspicious, derives from the war powers. How debt is assumed by legal fictions. We're going to touch on that when we get back. We got 5 pages left. I want to take a break, rest my voice. What's up, Dawn? Love you. Good to see you, Phil. Hope everybody's doing well. I don't read the comments when I'm going through this. I just kind of throwing it out there for you guys. I hope this helps you out and finds you well and lifts your spirits. Things are changing, ladies and gentlemen. Been at this for 15 years, and I'm telling you, things are better than they were 15 years ago. The American people, and furthermore, people around the world, are waking up. And they are taking affirmative action. You are no longer alone. It is not a lonely place anymore. These hard times are breeding strong-willed men and women to stand up and say enough's enough. And so thanks for allowing me to speak to you. I'm not everybody's cup of tea, nor do I want to be everybody's cup of tea. So if my way of explanation and showing you things isn't working for you, understand this: there's no substitution for reading. There's no substitution for reading. So if you don't like my explanation of it and how I came to acquire this information, please be about your business and go digest some literature. And peace and prosperity to you all.